first open up palette, this is what it should look like. This window right here, this is actually the palette wizard. And if you don't want this coming on every time you fire up palette, I always like for it to be there. But you can just click this little checkbox right here where my pointer is at. And the next time you open up palette, this will not appear. I always like it to appear because it's a shortcut to a lot of features in palette. So that's what I'm going to start with first tonight. If you click on this box right here that says Open Instruction Manual, another window will pop up, and it is actually the manual for palette. There is 923 pages to the palette manual. That's a lot of pages. But the cool thing about it, when you open it up through palette, there are links in there you can click on to get help on a lot of different topics. This is a very, very useful thing to get used to using. Next, I'm just going to go right down the list, and we're going to talk about all the things on the wizard before we go anywhere else. Use template design. So if I click on that, and you should see this box right here that says Select Template Pattern. So I'm going to cancel out of that, and I'm going to come back to it. Yes, it did. So another way to pull up that wizard, there's two other places. We're going to go back to that. But just quickly, if you click on this little flower icon right up here in this corner, and then you can go right down here to wizard, it will open the wizard right back up. Another place in palette, there's usually three ways to get to any feature in the software. Another place you can pull up the wizard is right here. And you can also press your F3 key, which is at the top of your keyboard. So I'm going to hit my F3 key, and it pulled it up that way. So there's 4 different ways to get this wizard to pop up. So we were going to look at this, use the template design. I'm just going to click on that. And what this is, these are pre-done templates for different projects you might want to embroidery. For instance, all of these designs here on this window are graphics and sayings for aprons. Maybe you want to do an embroidery on an apron. Here, I'll get it said right here in a moment. For instance, this one, for instance, if I just highlight it and click next, and then I can customize. So I can change any of the wording you can see here in this box. If I click on that, then it opens up edit the text. So I can edit the text on any of these pre-done designs. Maybe I want it to say something like, instead of home cuisine, maybe I want my apron to say Richard's cuisine. Okay, and then once that's done, hit your enter key, and then it changes it right on there. Now, if I'm happy with that, I can then hit the next button, and then I can send it to either one of my sewing machines that I have connected to palette. I'm going to show you how to do that here in a moment. I could actually send it to a machine to be stitched out. Okay. Or I can click on this one up here that says Edit and Design Page. If I click on that, it's going to bring it back up into the layout and editing screen of the main palette software. Pretty cool, eh? Here we go. Hold still. Hold still. There we go. Okay. So here I could actually add stuff to it if I wanted to. I could put more lettering on it, anything in the world you want to do. So that being said, I am going to This little icon right here, you can also use Control N. But if you click on that, that just like gives you a blank canvas to work on. So I'm just going to click on that. And I don't want to save anything. And then it brought up my blank screen. I could also have done that up here just by clicking on New. Okay. So I'm going to pull that wizard back up. And that's this template design. It actually has a lot of stuff in it. Aprons, bags, bathrobes, caps, jackets, kids' clothing, pants, sample, scarves, sheets. Yes, you can embroidery on your sheets. Center back of a shirt, chest of a shirt, the sleeves on the shirt, table linens, towels, you get the idea. A lot of really great information in there. And all I did then was click on the cancel button. So we're going to pull that wizard back up. I'm going to do it a different way each time so you can just see how easy that is to get back up. And that was use template design is what we did there. What's over in here are files that I have recently used in Palette. So it will have the last 6 files that you've opened in Palette. So you have a shortcut if you're using one file a lot. This is a super shortcut to get back to that file. So next on this list is create embroidery patterns using images. Okay, so if we click on that, and these are images that are included in the software. We will touch base in depth on images on our 3rd meeting. But if I click on that, it's automatically going to show the preview on it. And if I click on open, it's actually going to give me a choice of auto punch, cross stitch, photo stitch 1, photo stitch 2, which is also accessible in this other menu. So I'm just going to cancel this. I just wanted to show you what that did. And the other place to find those is under image. And there are those 4 choices right there as well. Auto punch, cross stitch, photo stitch, and photo stitch 2. Okay. We will cover these in depth on session number 3. This is session 1. So I'm going to go back over here and click on new. It just erases everything on my screen. And then I am going to reopen that wizard. And that was create embroidery patterns using images. So that would be a shortcut to get to the wizard to turn an SVG file, a PNG, a JPEG, to turn any of those images into an embroidery stitch out. That's what that is a shortcut to. One of the most important features is this one right here. Set your hoop size and fabric. And move this over to the side. Now you see these red lines on my screen right here? Those are actual hoopings, and I have this set for like, it is 18 by 24, I think. So I'm going to go into that right now and explain how I got this. You can make a custom hoop size by using this icon right here. Excuse me, I have a custom size of 18 by 18 inches. What I have selected here, I have the 9.5 by 14 inch hoop selected. That's how many hoopings it would take to cover that entire piece of fabric, 6 hoopings. Normally though, you're going to have the first one selected, hoop size. Machine type. This is a combo sewing embroidery machine. If you have a 10 needle, a 6 needle, or a single needle, you would select this one instead. And then the drop-down menu will have all of the hoop sizes that are applicable to the type of machine you own. For instance, these are all 10 needle, multi-needle machine hoops. And clicking on this, now it'll just have the hoops that apply to like the Destiny, the Altair, Meridian, or the Solaris series. Those are all the different hoop sizes. So of course, if you select the 10.5 by 10.5 or the 10.5 by 16, and you have an Altair, Destiny, or Meridian, that will not transfer properly to those machines because those machines do not take those two hoops. So for demonstration purposes, I usually select the 9.5 by 9.5. And now when I click on this, I actually get to select which fabric I'm going to be embroidering on. And normally, I'm a quilt maker. I normally just leave it on cotton fabric. What this does, the fabric selector, it will actually give you stabilizer recommendations for different types of fabric. For instance, cotton fabric, on top, none, the rear, tearaway. If we go to terry cloth, for the top of the embroidery, lace, water-soluble stabilizer, tearaway, and the back, the underside of the embroidery, tearaway or cutaway. So that's something you can play with. And it'll educate you a little bit on different types of fabric and what recommended stabilizers are for that fabric. I'm just going to cancel that out. And now you can see here, I have a 9.5 by 9.5 hoop size. That's the hoop I selected. And this is the area that will fit inside of that particular hoop. If I pull that, you can also pull that hoop size selector up by clicking on this little icon, design settings, that looks like a little embroidery hoop right there. Click on that, and it'll pull the screen right back up. Now output, you click on that, use existing design area. And this is normally, this is the default. This is where you would really just want to leave that set. I'm going to cancel that and pull this back up. But let's say you wanted to create a custom embroidery and you want to do something where you'll have to hoop it multiple times. And this is how you can do that. That's what custom size is for. Now down here, these are the different hoops. So with a 4 by 4 inch hoop, and I had this set for 18 by 18. If I wanted to use a 4 by 4 inch hoop to embroidery whatever design I create, there's how many hoopings. I'm just going to select OK on that. And as you can see, it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 times 7 is 49. That would be 49 hoopings. I don't think I'd use the 4 by 4 to embroidery this if I was actually going to do that. But let's change that to the 9.5 by 9.5. And actually, it's not even recommending that hoop, 9.5 by 14. And there's where it came with those 6 hoopings like you originally saw on my screen. So I'm going to leave the page size up to a standard hoop size and click on OK. Let's go back to our wizard. And that was set the hoop size and fabric. So the next column down here, there are 3 icons. Import embroidery patterns. Okay, so let's click on A. And what that is text. And if you'll notice over here on the right-hand side of the screen, it says import. So when I clicked on that, it automatically brought this up. And these are text effects. If you click on the drop-down menu, block fonts, decorative fonts, there's a lot of stuff in here. Monogram, script, serif, small text, transformed, so forth and so on. So while we're right here, I'm going to explain this side of the screen, the right side, and the left side over here. So underneath this category was decorative fonts and all of this stuff right here. So when you click on the from, we're under import. This is where you would get designs into palette. If you click on design library,
And then the second drop-down menu, these are all the embroidery files that are included in palette. And the object here is find an embroidery design that you want to work with. And there's more than one way to get it over here into this area. For instance, one way is to hold down your left mouse button on a design and just drag it over. Okay. Then we'll use Control Z. I'm on a PC, not a Mac. And that will just get rid of it. Or I can highlight it and click on Import. Now, the reason you might want to do that step instead of dragging it over, when you highlight a file and click on Import, it centers it automatically in the hoop. If you drag something over, it's just you're going to drop it wherever you want it, and it won't automatically center it, which is okay because under the Home tab, you can go right over here to Edit, Arrange, and move it to the center. And now they're overlaid, but that was just an example of how to center a design. Any design that you have, whether it be something built into palette or something you have sent from your machine into palette to work on. I'm going to get rid of those because if I just close all of this out, let's say I'm going to close all of those tabs and get rid of them. And now they're not over there. Well, how do you get them back? It's very easy. What we're going to do, we are going to go to View. And then you see under Show and Hide, under Attributes, there's the Sewing Attribute tab, Text Attributes, Color Palette, Import Pane. And now I have them all back. It's that easy to get it all back. Get my glasses off here for a minute. Here we go. Okay. So that's how you can recover all of those tabs. If you close them out and you're having a trouble finding them, just remember it's under the View tab at the top of the palette window. Now this one over here that says Sewing Order, I'm going to pull over one of these designs. And when I dropped it, look what happens over here. So for each color in this design, or each step of this design for the actual stitch out, these are the steps, the order in which it will stitch it out. 1, 2, 3, 4. Notice now there's no blue boxes around that. So in order to select something so that you can work on it, you can do it this way: left click and drag a box around it and release. And then you get all these little black boxes. Those are called handles. Okay, notice everything here is selected. And you have these four blue boxes around each item over here. So if I just click in this gray area, it will release everything. And to select one part of that design, I just click that once and it put a red box around it. And then I'm going to click it twice. But then it selected everything. So in palette, to be able to, if you wanted to delete part of this, there's a step you have to take. See up here where it says stitches? So what we have to do, since this is basically all grouped together, you have to divide it by color. Divides the stitch data according to various colors. Click on that. And what it did then, it separated everything here according to color. So let's say you wanted to change the color of some of this, or you just wanted to delete one of the steps. Now, if I go back to that the green part of that wreath and double click on it, I now just have this one part selected, And I could actually drag and change the size of it. I could move the one item all the way off. I'm just going to use Control Z to get it back to where it was. Or maybe I want to change the color of the wreath. And to change any colors, once you have something in here on your design page, you go over here where it says color and click. And then you select which thread grouping you want to use. And let's say I want to, I have a lot of, personally, I have a lot of Madeira embroidery thread. Maybe I want that wreath to be, let's see, I want a blue wreath. So I'm just going to click on that blue and it automatically changed what I had highlighted. It's no longer green, it's now blue. If I don't like that, I can just hit Control Z on my keyboard and change it back. Let's try it in purple this time. Another way to undo that if you don't like it is to go right here and click your undo button. It'll change it back to the previous color. Or maybe I just want to totally get rid of that. So if I want to get rid of that after it's highlighted, you have to position your cursor until you get the four-way arrows like that, right click, and then you can do delete or cut. I'm just going to hit cut. And now all I have left is the actual bow and the decorative balls and the red, the yellow, and then the outline of it. So now I'm going to, I want to select all and I want to make it bigger. So I'm going to just grab a corner and enlarge so we can get a look at it. Now, one thing you need to remember, if you want the stitches to recalculate, it won't do it automatically like this. What you need to do, and I'm going to back out of this to where I was. When you hover over a corner, hold down your Control key on your keyboard. See how the zigzag appeared? Now, if you drag, it recalculates the stitch density. And that applies to any design. And that's what you'd want to do if you're, especially if you're going to enlarge in palette, because in palette, you can enlarge to a much greater percentage than you can on one of our sewing machines. I can make this as big as I have a hoop for it. And it will maintain that stitch density throughout. There we go. Now over here on the sewing order, you can tell, always tell that you have this selected, because if you have everything selected, the little blue boxes will all be around each one of these steps. I've done things where there's over 100 steps over here on the right. So there's no limit to the amount of those that you can do. Okay. So we're going to clear that one out. And we're going to get that wizard back up. And we just did that, the embroidery patterns, that's that import design library that I just talked about. So that's where that would bring you. I'm going to pull the wizard back up again. Now this center one, outline shapes. Let's just click on that. So under here, if we click down on that, there was design library, and the next one is outline shapes. These are a lot of the outline shapes that you would see in IQ Designer. So palette is basically, let me reverse that. IQ Designer is like the light version of palette. Palette does everything that IQ Designer can do times 10. It's like IQ Designer on steroids for instance. So if I wanted to use one of these shapes, for instance, maybe I want this heart, and I'm just going to drag it over. I'm going to hold down my control key and enlarge it, just so that I can see it better. We can all see it better. Now it's not centered, so I'm going to go up here. I'm on my home tab. I'm going to come over here to arrange, click, left click. I'm going to move that entire thing to the center. And when you pull it over, it has a fill stitch in there. So see all the pink stitching? If you look over here, there's an outline and a fill stitch. So perhaps what you would want to do when you right click on it, you just do that again. I'm going to select everything. If you don't want the fill stitches in there, after you have it highlighted, right click, and then these two little windows up here appear. Running stitch, that is for the outline. Fill stitch is for the fill inside of the outline. You can drop down this menu and you have all of these choices for a fill stitch. For instance, maybe you would like to do like a freestanding lace type of pattern. So that net fill would be really great for that. That is also a great stitch to use for knockdown stitches. Okay. So if I have that for a knockdown stitch is like, say you're going to embroidery on something plush like velour or fake fur or a thick terry cloth, and you want to monogram it. So a knockdown stitch will stabilize all those fibers that would stick out in between your monogram of the actual letters. So here is where you can actually adjust the spacing of this little grid work here. For instance, see it says 0.12. Well, let's just go down a little bit lower here. Oops, wrong way. There we go. And if you look down here at the bottom, you can see it getting smaller. So there's the smallest it would get. That's what I would personally choose for a knockdown stitch. Here, pattern, it has the squares. If I select the triangles, these are all now little bitty triangles. This would be a square with an X through the center. This is personally what I would choose for a knockdown stitch, because you will have the best coverage for a knockdown stitch by using this right here. If you notice under sewing attributes where I'm at right here, I am actually in expert mode. If I click on this and go back to beginner mode, which is where it would be when you first start it up, just redo this. Sometimes when you're in beginner mode, it will not have as many features here to work with. So, and never fear if you've done something here and you don't like it, and you can always send it back to default by clicking on one of these little black houses over here. It's like a little home button. So if you recall, I changed this down here to its smallest setting. If I click on the house, it now went up to where its default of 0.12. And that's how you get, if you change any of these numbers, just to get it back to its default setting, click on the little black house, and the little hovery sign that pops up actually says default. Just click that one back. All these others are still on default. Okay. So this can also be used other than a decorative fill, other than a knockdown stitch. This just can be used for a decorative purpose as well, because we can make this way bigger. See that over there? See how it made that larger? Or we can right click on it and change to something else. Maybe you want cross stitches in there. Or perhaps Perhaps you want to use one of the 54 decorative fill patterns that are in palette. And we'll talk about those at length here in a moment. Lots of things you can do there, but you can also not have any fill in there whatsoever and just use that outline. Think maybe you want to make an applique, a heart shape for an applique. This is how you would do that. We will be going through the appliquing thing at a later date, but not yet. So that is what this little icon right here does, outline shapes. Okay. The next one would be, these are actually, this would be a shortcut to a file that you've already opened previously and worked on. If you click on this, open embroidery design, click on that. And this is where you can actually search through your computer or a USB stick that's plugged into your computer to actually pull in other embroidery designs you already own. Think Anita Good Design, think OESD, so forth and so on.